Okay, so we've looked at skill, what skill is. So we're going to move on in our second unit to learning and performance. So how do we learn to perform these different skills that we have identified? So what is learning? Learning is the relatively permanent change in behaviour brought about as a result of practice or experience. So from the moment we're born, we begin to acquire and develop psychomotor skills. They range from simple skills like standing to more complex ones like a tennis serve. Now, being able to develop these skills is a result of learning and maturation, and it's important that they both work together. So we know what learning is because we've just looked at the definition. Maturation is the natural progression of physical development with age. So in terms of it has to move together, the bottom bit there in white totally sums it up. So until we have the physical, anatomical and psychological maturation to do so, we will not be able to perform a certain skill. So for example, as a baby, I have the physical, anatomical and psychological maturation to learn to crawl, but not necessarily to walk until I reach a certain point in my learning and maturation phases. So learning is a relatively permanent change in behaviour, and that works with our maturation in terms of as we develop physically with our age, we're able to perform and learn more complex skills. So it's quite clear that as individuals we don't go from an inability to a perfect performance instantly. It's a gradual three-stage process, and we call this the stages of learning. Now these are the stages a learner goes through from beginning to mastering a skill, and as you can see there are 3 stages, each one obviously becoming progressively harder in terms of the level of ability we have to perform a certain skill. So we'll go through each one of these one at a time, starting with cognitive. So the cognitive stage is also called the thinking stage. Now that will get you a mark in an exam, so make sure that is down on your piece of paper. Within this stage, the learner is beginning to organise all the cognitive processes that they need to be able to perform this new skill. Since they have very little practice of putting together and organising these processes, sometimes it can be very slow. So within this stage, what do we expect to see from the learner? So from the outside, they'd make a lot of errors. They tend to be in what we call a pre-practice stage, and they're trying to understand the task that they're trying to achieve. In order to do this, they need to be fully attentive to the skill. So for example, in basketball, we watch the ball as we dribble, and then as we improve on our performance, we're able then to lift our head up. So our full attention has to be on our action and the movement of the ball. So what about a coach or a teacher then? As a coach or teacher, if I'm trying to help a performer or a learner within the cognitive stage of learning, I want to use lots of demonstrations and clear guidance. Okay, with my guidance and demonstration, keywords are helpful, so it will help them to remember that perfect mental image in order to help them remember what the skill looks like. So easy example, one we tend to have in athletics when we're doing javelin or shot put throwing, toe, knee, chin. We want our toe, knee and our chin all in line in our preparation phase of our throw. And lots of people usually take the mick out of a man called Tony Chin, and that's a means of them being able to remember. So keywords with a clear demonstration to go with it. So once we're starting to perform, we have some feedback from our coach or teacher, but it's important that our feedback is given after the performance, because we have to have our full attention on the performance itself. We can't focus on outside stimuli such as feedback until we finish performing and we can think about what we're doing. So cognitive stage, first stage, early learning kind of thing, lots of errors, lots of help needed to help us improve. So we look at stage number 2, the associative stage. Now this is the stage of rapid improvement. So we've gone from the thinking stage to the stage of rapid improvement. And within this stage, performers are gradually becoming more successful. So we're not really thinking quite so much, and we're looking more at the performance. So as a learner, I'm making fewer errors. I can also make use of intrinsic or kinesthetic feedback. Now that's feedback that's come from inside me. It's my feeling. Do I feel like I've performed the skill well or not? Learning is now consolidated. So my movement response is now pretty much correct, nearly there. So when I see a stimuli within an environment, for example, I'm playing tennis and I've served, it's been returned to me, I'm watching that ball, my movement response is to move into the position, so in line with the ball possibly, and I'm watching for that bounce and watching where the ball is. So my response of moving in the right direction is nearly correct, but maybe not always 100%. My skill performance is now a lot smoother rather than looking jerky and ill-timed. So I'm more efficient, so that means I'm using just enough power, just enough muscle tension and contraction as I need. And also I'm becoming more accurate in my performances. So as a coach then, how does it differ? So in order to help my associative stage learner, practice needs to include varied situations. So now that I know that they can perform the skill well, I want them to be able to look at competition and other different stimuli that they might have to think about while they're performing the skill. By doing this, it allows them to start being able to adapt the skill, so they have a single skill that they can adapt to use in different situations and do so successfully. Again, with our feedback, this time it can be concurrent. That means you can do it while they're actually performing. So it's as you're performing, that's when your coach is shouting at you, oh, do this, do that, and so on. So during performance, feedback is given to the learner because they can deal with performing and taking in more stimuli from an environment. So stage number 3. Our autonomous stage. Easy way to remember it, it becomes automatic. So that's our last end of our learning stage. So cognitive, the cogs are turning, you're thinking. Associative, you're associating skills with situations. And then autonomous, it's pretty much automatic. So skill improvement is continuing, but at quite a lower rate. And progress now is looking at our fine attention to details of the technique. So those key parts that maybe might just be tweaking a skill rather than learning the whole skill itself. Performers are becoming more involved and responsible for their own improvement. So they need that motivation and the means of evaluating their skill. So at this point, they understand what their skill is, what they need to do to be able to perform that skill, which allows them to evaluate and decide whether or not their performance was successful. Individually as the learner then, so our skill performance shows high levels of smoothness, efficiency and accuracy. Errors are becoming very rare and the skill is now becoming habitual. So we don't really pay attention to the performance itself. We do it quite naturally without much thought. And as we said, we can start to analyse our own performance and adjust our actions by ourselves because of that improved understanding of A, what we want to achieve, and B, the skill we need to achieve that goal. As the coach then, so now because learners are able to cope with more stimuli during performance, I can start think about including tactics and so on. So thinking about how they use these skills within certain situations to be advantageous to them or their teammates. So learning and performance then, key things to know. Definition of learning and maturation, how they link together and how they may affect learning a skill, and also the 3 stages of learning. So how do they link together? What are the differences between the 3? And specifically, what would I expect a performer to look like in each of those stages of learning? What is a sporting example to support those?